Let me ask you, that thing with Katt Williams and Shay Shay, you know, how true, in your opinion, how true was it what Katt Williams was saying?
Well, first of all, when it dropped, every comedian was sitting there waiting to see if they were next. You know, because you ain't no telling where that could have went. You know, and I knew I had a good relationship with Katt. I knew I was solid, but I still wanted that mention because the platform was so large. But some of the things that were said were acknowledged by those that he said it about. Katt is 100%er. You know, he speaks with truth, but he's also a comedian. So naturally, he's going to exaggerate and bring humor into it. But if you look at the Diddy situation, that turned out to be true. And he said a lot of things going to be unveiled. So Katt is a prophet, you know.
Totally get
Katt
it.
is definitely a prophet, man. Katt, he speaks from his mind. He has a very high IQ. People need to know about Katt Williams. He's like on a Mensa scholar level when it comes to his IQ.
OG, two letters that define respect. I created the Original OGs to document the forgotten parts of American history. I want to recognize and give a voice to the men and women that have climbed to the top of their game. The men and women this marquee have been authenticated as original OGs. Welcome to my world, a world of the originals, the unique. Welcome to the Original OGs. Welcome to the Original OGs, and I'm your host, OG Mr. Rick. Hey, first let me say thank you to all the people that stop me and say how much you appreciate the show, and we need that. And we're here to give it to you. I'm asking you to tell everyone to share and subscribe. You know, this is a movement, so we want to build this thing up so that we can have a voice to get our message out. Thank you very much. Don't forget, subscribe. Today, we're going to walk off into the comedy world. This is my man, Damon Williams, OG Damon Williams. Hey, brother.
Hey, I'm official now, OG.
My man.
Yes, sir.
Hey, you was
yes,
official before you got here, you dig? But hey, it is what it is,
yes,
man.
Sir.
I like to start with a little history on each other. Where are your parents from?
My mother's from Indianapolis, and my father's a Chicagoan.
Okay.
Yeah, so my mother, she snuck off from our hometown and ran into Slick Willie.
Okay.
My pops, though, you know, even Slick in the sense that he was a real sharp dude, man, a genius. Went to college at age 16.
Wow.
Was a pilot in the Air Force.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then became a chemist and ran the Water Reclamation District here for years.
That's a beautiful thing there, man.
And my mother, she tapped into AT&T and got with Illinois Bell and sustained that career for 30 years and retired. And, you know, it is what it is now.
Hey, it's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
You grew up in Chicago. Where about?
Woodlawn initially. The first address I personally remember was 6618 South Greenwood.
Wow.
Went to Dumas Elementary. Prior to that, I know we lived on 43rd and Cottage, but I was an infant, so I don't remember that. But I remember block parties on Greenwood. I remember when the Blackstones were, you know, coming into prominence around there, and the TWO organization, all of that. And that was our initial move. Then Mom's, when she got the AT&T job, we moved south and went to Beverly area.
Okay.
Yeah, right off Ashland.
Life got better.
Yeah, 95th. Yeah, and it was like a fairy tale, man.
Yeah, I
Because
get
we used
it.
to go to the Beverly movie theater even when we lived in Woodlawn, because my mother wanted to expose us to, you know, better environment. And so when we finally moved there, I remember it was the day after Christmas, and there was still white people on the block, and these two little white girls came down the block with a whole pony. I'm like, we have moved to paradise. I didn't know it was their Christmas
With a pony.
gift. Yeah, they got a, you know, little petting zoo type pony walking down the block. I'm like, we have moved to paradise.
You went on, you got married. You've been with your wife how long?
I'm with my second wife now.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, my first wife, I was with her until my son was 14. And we're still very close and very tight, you know, as far as the family, we all still associate. Then my second wife, we've been married to be 10 years coming up. We've been together 15. So the last, you know, 30 years of my life, or my journey has been them two.
And your son is how old?
My son is 32.
And he's doing what?
Everything, man. Besides music, which he has a new album out he just dropped. And we're
What's
doing
the name of it?
It's called In Process.
Hey, go get it.
In Process by Damon A. Williams. Got to put the A in there. It'll pop right up. But he's also, you know, he's a mentor. He tutors at the Juvenile Detention Center. He has a podcast called Ergo Radio, and then they have a community center called the Breathing Room, which is down in Inglewood on 50th and 51st and Bishop. So he's all over the place, dynamic young man. You know, it's my only seed, even though I raised his sister. And she's doing great things too. She's a script supervisor for The Chi, the TV show, and she's a playwright and things of that nature. So, you know, we put in the work and got some good people out of that. But they were both heavily active in the streets, especially it started with Mike Brown down in Ferguson. They took groups of people down there. Then they had an encampment on the west side outside the torture chamber that the police had over there, you know, back in the day. And then they went on to do this Breathing Room Center, and they're all over the place. So we got roots in the city, and, you know, we still trying to make sure that next generation is straight also.
Like yourself, you know, you've been in this game, radio, television, stage, the whole 9 yards. They're watching this, and that's an inspiring thing for children.
So we set the example, but we also instilled in them entrepreneurship. My son's mother, April, she actually had my son involved in learning the financial markets, and he was a spokesperson for, they had an investment club for kids called Ujama Jr. And so he's, you know, highly informed with the, you know, investing and things. As a matter of fact, he was featured on PBS and it went viral. He was like, it's called The 14-Year-Old Millionaire in the Making. So, you know, but if you instill in them, you know, I always taught my son to think outside the matrix, you know.
Exactly.
I had a job for 5 years at City Hall, jumped out of there and been an entrepreneur ever since. And I always told him it's another way, because a job gonna be there, you know. Exactly. It's an opportunity, but if you reach out and step on faith, you can do big things.
And there's value in the job.
Oh yeah.
You know, because you learn things there.
Yeah, it'll get you there.
Yes, sir. We need to start with our children at a young age. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and she was just here and she left. She always come by to check her set.
Indeed.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, she's the queen of the set. I'm
you
already
dig
aware.
what I'm saying?
Knowing. Yeah.
I'd like to commend you on what you've done with your children. And how was it raising children, because you have two, I don't distinguish.
Indeed.
And trying to not get caught up in street life?
Well, fortunately for me, the street life came before the kids. And so when I was doing what I was doing out there in the bricks, I had a conscious decision to make. And my father actually said to me, you need to find a way to maintain your lifestyle that doesn't risk you missing a substantial part of your son's life.
You hear what I'm saying? And
when he said that, I already, you know, was on an exit strategy. So I opened a Subway sandwich shop downtown on Wabash, 185 North Wabash in 1990.
Wow.
First and youngest franchisee, as far as 25 years old, and first black in the region or whatever. But that was his plan, to get that. Then I met his mother. She worked across the street.
Oh, wow.
So that's how he came to be, because of that. And luckily, I knew for a fact that I couldn't be, you know, in a high profile position at that age and still be doing dirt, you know. So
it doesn't work out.
Downtown City Hall, I mean, I went from City Hall to downtown in the subway. So, you know, he didn't see that, but he's aware of it. You know, they're both aware of it. And when I say it too, I have two more, because my current wife, you know, my wife Juanita, I came into her kids' life when they were preteen and teen. And so now they're both functioning full grown adults as well. My son is in the Air Force, and my daughter, she's also doing things with bartending and such like that. So they all finding ways to come up. But you definitely, if anybody knows, if you ever been in the game, if you get out the game is just as addictive as the substance.
Believe that.
Yeah. The money, the lifestyle, it's hard to walk away. So I'm really proud of myself. But I knew I saw better for myself, because, you know, 80s was the thing, and it was basically legal, because they was giving it to us because they wanted us to do what we was doing, and we didn't realize we was a tool of the system.
It was a sucker punch.
It does, indeed it was. But you ain't have to be a sucker. So I encourage anybody, if you're doing whatever you do, have a exit strategy and an end game, because it ain't gonna last forever. I don't care if you're out here doing these bills, I don't know what you're doing. It ain't gonna last forever. You got two endings with that, and everybody knows that neither one of them are positive.
I don't think you want to be involved with either one.
Indeed.
You know, so you were involved in what lifestyle in the streets?
What's the statute of limitations? No.
Well, here we talk roundabout.
Indeed,
you know
indeed.
So,
back in the day, I was moving weight,
I get it.
and I was, but I always had a job. I was at City Hall, suit and tie. You would have thought I was an alderman.
I get it.
Because I felt like, and from your appearance, what you wear says a lot about you.
Hey.
And it doesn't say certain things about you as well.
It speaks for you.
Indeed. And if anybody knows, if you go to any establishment and you're in a room and it's a room full of people and you have a question about this establishment and you see one person wearing a suit, you're going to automatically assume he's the owner or he's knowledgeable about the circumstance. So I use that as a shield.
Exactly.
So I was suit and tie every day, went to work, and did my thing. But I wasn't, involved in anything that was cooked, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, it was a social situation.
I get it.
It was a lot of politicians and, socialites that would partake in certain events. And I was the purveyor of the party favor.
I totally get it.
Yeah. And then I had a crew of other cats that were like-minded. And we stayed out the way. We stayed out the organizations. We didn't have no type of situation. I mean, I grew up with the 5. I made money with the 6.
I
if
get
you know
it.
what I'm saying. So, and it's it's nothing to glorify, but it is part of my journey. And like I said, I'm proud to say that I was able, because you don't have many retired people in that circumstance, especially without sitting down for a little while.
Doesn't work like
Yep.
that. So what were the downsides of that for you?
The guilt and the nightmares. Every once in a while, you had that dream about people's lives being affected in a negative way, or possibly, I was sympathetic, but a mother might show up and try to bring a VCR, and she out here messing her money up and messing her life up.
And tearing up the home.
Indeed. So those things were always a problem. And I didn't deal on that level, but I still knew it existed. And so I was, trying to, I had 2 goals. I had a brother who had caught a major case, and he was he had a 40-year sentence, 20 in, and I was trying to get him a better attorney to try to at least get his time reduced. And I wanted to be an entrepreneur, open my own business. Those were the 2 things. So initially, before I found Subway, which I found on a fluke, I was on the airline, and I was looking through a magazine, Black Enterprise magazine, and had the top franchises for blacks. And then it was like, the lowest startup costs and the lowest build out. So I was going to do the Subway. But prior to that, the year before, I was still working at City Hall, and I took a leave of absence because I was going to open a Solomon's Fisheries.
Okay.
Now, Solomon's had about 3 locations. Solomon's was owned by Seal Johnson, who is Selena Johnson's dad, and he's also a blues singer, made the song Fine Brown Frank. I just want to put that out there for reference.
I remember
and me and
him.
Seal, we had bonded. We found a location. I had took my leave of absence from my job, went to the spot. We were about to sign the lease, and when they asked, well, what type of business were we doing? And I was like, it's fish. They say, is it fried? And I'm like, yeah. They like, our insurance won't cover the fries.
Wow.
So I was off the job. I was locked in with Seal. We found a location, which is a process, and it was in Hyde Park.
Exactly.
It was going to be a beautiful situation. I was living in Hyde Park at the time in the 50-50 building, right around the corner from the house. Shut me down. So I had to go back to work.
Wow.
Then I had to, find another location. Figured out that the fish thing wasn't working. I was trying to do Harold's, but they weren't taking any new owners at the time. So I'm on this flight, and I see this thing about Subway, and, never heard of it. But I looked into it, and I found out the franchise fee was only $7,500 at the time.
Oh, wow.
How about that?
Yeah.
And the average build-out cost for a store was about $40,000.
Wow.
So, we used to have that on the dresser.
Exactly.
So I'm like, okay, I got to get it. But the issue was, I'm liquid, but it's all cash. And I can't walk in there and put $47,000 on the desk.
Because you can't explain it.
I can't explain it. Working at City Hall, suit or no suit. My pops, who was a square dude as far as life and legit, out of nowhere, when he told me I need to figure out what I'm doing with myself, I said, well, I have a plan, and I know what I want to do. I want to do a franchise, and I have the money, but I can't use it. And I had no idea he would suggest this, but my father said, your grandmother has 5 bank accounts. And my father was a tax preparer on the side of being a chemist and a realtor. He said, put $9,900 in each account. And under $10,000, they don't say nothing about it. Did that, he said, she'll write you a check, and that's how I got my franchise, and that's how I got off the street. So my grandmother and my pops got me out. Now, mind you, my mother saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost. But my mother's place, the attic was was the stash for the
Yeah.
So and she knew I was involved with some things, but she also knew I had a good job in her mind. So I'm stacking to get out, right? I'm getting my
Right.
exit money. And every once in a while I come by, check her, and I run up in the attic. And she's like, you keep going up there. So come to find out, when I was ready to quit, I pulled it out the ceiling and I said, Ma, this is what I've been doing and this is what I'm about to do. And I'm out the street and I got a legitimate situation. And I'm thinking I'm revealing this to her. She said, man,
I do that all the time,
I
boy.
bet all that money. She said, I did everything I could not to take it, not to get her go into it. I was like, she
Okay.
would have gave my money to the pastor, and that pastor would have spent that money in Cancun.
Oh, hello?
Yeah, but it was a proud moment at that point, too, to say, look, this is it, and I'm done. And I stayed with it. So I had my Subway for a couple of years. Now, mind you, this is 1990. Subway is unheard of.
Right.
In fact, that franchise didn't come to prominence nationwide until Jared, the fat guy, came on with the big pants and he lost that weight by eating Subway.
Exactly.
Had no idea. Turns out Jared was a pedophile and went to prison. Had nothing to do with us. But it turned the franchise around. But that was after I was already, struggling in the game with the situation.
Right.
Because Subway was set up at the time. They were really trying to be the largest franchises.
Oh,
So
okay.
they wanted to have more stores than McDonald's.
Right.
So they had a goal of having 5,000 stores by the year 2000. I'm in 1990. So they opened the franchises, popping them left and right. Some are healthy, some are not. Some are too close to the other ones.
Right.
Plus, if you still to this day eat a Subway sub, the meat is this thin.
I get it.
And I was right across the street from Mr. Submarine.
Who's laying it on?
And then Fantano's opened up right down the block. We right across the street from the Harold Washington School. And all them students used to come to Subway. Man, them spots open. Business went down. We lost residents in the high rise that I was in as far as that goes. So I'm starting to go in debt. So I sold the franchise, but it was really a matter of coercion.
Right.
Because they were supposed to come in and help me. I could have sued them, man, but I ain't even tripping on it right now. Life turned out, and I'm glad it didn't, because to make money in Subway, you got to be a multi-store owner. And
Okay.
I thought I was gonna open the spot, put my people in there to work, be out on my boat, come check the register. Man, I'm in there baking bread and cutting vegetables. Like, I never worked fast food, but you gotta watch your
Welcome to
money.
business.
Indeed, you gotta be in on the cash business, especially because I had my cousins and my brothers working. Any pretty girl come in, get a free sandwich for a date type thing. So I had to
No,
be in
sir.
there. So it turns out I was going in debt, because even back then in 1990 to 92, I was paying like $4,000 a month for rent just to be in a food court.
Hello?
It wasn't even a whole store. So I'm like, I gotta get out this thing. So while I'm going through that, I happened to meet a guy that was the membership director of the sporting club, athletic center down there. And it was like a premier health club where all the NBA players come and work out. Jordan used to work out down there. I met him in there for the first time, gave him a card, told him if he ever want Subway, he
Come
could
check
pull
me
up.
out.
He ain't got to come in, just call and we'll run into the car type thing. And I heard some guys, Mark Brooks, who's an entrepreneur here in town, he owns or is partners with, they have like business clubs in airports. Like, if you Delta, they got the Delta.
Right.
But this is, you don't have to be a member of any airline. I don't know the name of it, I would shout it out. But they're in Midway and all over the country. And he and another guy, we were, hooping, and they were talking about all jokes aside and open
Wow.
mic Wednesday, and the lady down there that hosts, like, old girl with the big lips from HBO, blah, 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 blah. And I'm ear hustling.
Adele?
And it turns out to be Adele Givers.
I get it.
So I heard that, and it set a spark off, because I always had people laughing at my wife, or she like say they laugh at your seriousness. I was just talking, but they found it funny. My older sister and all my people, they always laugh whenever I come around. So I'm like, as I was working at City Hall, and Eddie Murphy dropped Delirious, and that was the first time we saw a young African-American comedian,
Right.
kicking it and talking crazy.
Killing it.
I mean, we heard it with Richard and Red, but we didn't see it.
It's
So
a different game.
a whole different game, because I'm at my cousin's house, and he was the first dude I ever seen with a VCR in his house. It was the one that still had the cord for the remote, and we rented Delirious. And to see that young brother, popping corn like that and saying what he was saying and doing what he was doing, so subconsciously, I started mimicking him to an extent.
Okay.
So around City Hall, they started calling me Eddie, because I was always funny.
Right.
And one time, I never realized it initially until I was talking to this young lady, I'm flirting, and I said something. She said, "Oh, you the Eddie Murphy type." I'm like, "Hold on, I ain't nobody type." So then I'm like, let me pull up on, imitating this dude if that's what
Right.
it's coming across as. But the humor was always there. So now I had never thought about doing it, but when I heard the brothers talking about it, I said, you know what, I can do this comedy thing. And I had time on my hand. I got my Subway, but I'm about to get out of that.
Right.
Run to a little spot in the financial district called Close Up Piano Bar, the original location. I went and did a little 5-minute set, And
Really?
it went pretty decent. But while I'm in there, George Wilborn, who was the house MC, comedian extraordinaire, radio personality in movies and everything, was on stage. Okay,
Wow.
He went up, he closed the show, and my father had told me years before that he had a nephew that was doing comedy. So my father and George's father are brothers.
Wow.
But neither one of us were raised in the homes of our fathers,
Right.
so we didn't know each other growing up.
Dig that.
So I walk up to him and I say, man, I'm pretty sure you're my cousin because you spell your name like my pops with 2 L's. And he said, yeah, that's Uncle Sonny. That's my uncle.
Wow.
I said, well, I'm your cousin. I said, now this is my first time ever doing comedy, but when I learn this thing, because you don't want to push up on him,
Right.
I'm gonna come back and look you up, get the ropes, and walked off. He said, man, where the
Man,
hell
what
you going?
are you doing?
Yeah, he's like, yeah, you can't tell me you my cousin and you're about to do comedy and walk away. So he cuffed me, right? Next day, he took me to, all jokes aside, and got me on the list because back then, the list was extensive and you had to draw numbers, and if your number didn't get picked, then you didn't go up. And James
Exactly.
Hanna was the gatekeeper of the list, and he was hard on young comedians, but he got me around James. But I still told him I didn't really want people to know I'm his cousin. I just want to be, on my
You
own.
want to do your own thing.
Yeah, man, that dude gathered the whole comedy community together and said, hey, look, I just met my first cousin. He about to be doing comedy. I don't want to hear no mouth. He going to be getting guest spots. He going to be, doing this, that, and the other. And them cats hated me for about 2 years after that. They felt like everything I got because I'm George Wilborn's cousin.
You skated.
To this day, Ricky Smiley calls me George Wilborn's cousin. And we just had a video pop up from an interview we did. So I jump in, right? And now I found something, because when you're in the life, it's a certain notoriety to come with the life back in the street, And you don't want to, be a famous baller, but people know when you show up, you sharp, your appearance, all of a sudden you're a hero. They putting your chair and the table up on the stage and bringing out champagne. You somebody.
Right.
Well, you go from that to fast food, and working in the uniform and being in the shop, even though I'm the owner, it's still a different type of thing. So you
Most
still kind of,
definitely.
that attention's still there. I never really sought the limelight back then.
Right.
But now I'm in a game where I have to get the limelight. So, but I'm coming from a business standpoint. So the first booking I really got, at all jokes aside, after being an open mic guy for a little while, was as a replacement for a guy that had a situation that didn't make it to the show.
Wow.
And the owner said, well, look, I used to come from the Bulls game. I have season tickets. I come from the Bulls, catch the late show at all jokes, sit back there and watch all the masters work and just study the game. Well, this time they need somebody as an opener. And he said, I'll let you do the night. If it work out, I'll let you finish out the weekend.
Wow.
Man, I'm so excited that I went out and bought tickets for all the shows. So I want all my people to see me on the weekend. Never asked them what I'm making.
Right.
Right? Sunday come around, the man handed me an envelope. It's a check in there. 5 shows I had done, $125. Now I done spent probably $200 a show just getting my people in. But it was a lesson. So he said, well, I just did you a favor.
Exactly.
He was like, you got exposure you wouldn't get anywhere else. I said, you ain't do me no favor because I could count. It's these people paid $20. It's 300 people per show. Come on, man. So I decided I need to be him.
Hello.
So I went and found my own space and started promoting my own shows. And once I started doing that kind of caught on. He came and got me from that circumstance and hired me to be his MC of the show that Adele had left because she had blown up. So now we partners on that night. Now I'm sharing in the proceeds. Now it makes sense for me.
Exactly.
So I tell young comedians or anybody in any industry, music, whatever, learn the promoter side of the game. Learn the business side. It's business show, not show business.
Right.
Okay. And once you learn how to promote a show, host a show, perform on it, book it,
Hello.
do the advertising. Now, not only does that give you a base to earn your own money, it also prevents anybody from being able to trick you or cheat you.
Exactly.
Because you know all the angles.
Exactly.
So that's where I went with that, and I've been doing that ever since. I've been a promoter, comedian throughout my career.
How was it being in the streets, still connected there, and being funny? Because the streets are serious.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, a lot of the cats would roll up, because everybody went to all jokes. Back then, it was the premier spare to be.
Exactly.
It was all the Bears and the Bulls, and it was that.
Right.
People wore furs. They were dressed. You know
Exactly.
what I'm saying? We wore suits. As a matter of fact, it was required that we wear a jacket or a blazer on stage on the weekends. And so, some of the cats were like, man, what you doing? And doing the comedy thing, blah, blah, blah. Because they just knew me as Gucci D from back in the day. Because Gucci D was on my place. I had a Porsche, and I also tried to rap. I started a little rap label of my own and put out my own single with Steve Silk Hurley. And so they knew that guy. And now you up here telling these jokes. At first, people didn't take it serious.
Right.
You know, but I had a lot of respect, so nobody really, was bogus toward me either.
I get it.
And they were supportive because all of us know anytime one of us get out, we want to see you stay out and make it.
Exactly.
Or, dabble both ways, but still have that legitimacy. So they was rooting for me, and it never really came back up. It's still guys to this day like, I remember you, blah, blah, blah. So the funniest thing about that, so I'm speaking about notoriety, so I'm starting to do comedy. I'm about to close my store out, I'm going to sell it, but I still had it. And this lady saw me on the street. And I'm 6 months in the game, and I done enough shows around town thinking, people might know me.
Right.
Because I did a Comedy Central, a show called Premium Blend,
Wow.
produced by Simbad's brother, Mark Atkins, and his partner, Andre Wiseman. They came to All Jokes Aside and filmed a stand-up series to be the opposite of Def Comedy Jam. Because Def Jam was so raw. This was comedy with a social conscience, and it was hosted by AJ Jamal. So I got my first TV credit.
Wow.
This lady came, saw me on the street, and like, I know you. I'm like, yeah, I do a little comedy. She's like, no.
No,
You used
I
to
know
give me
you
extra
something
mayo.
else.
Yeah, no. You used to put extra mayo and give me extra
You
food.
dig?
She knew me from Subway.
Exactly.
And I thought I'd have caught on already. So it was a humbling moment, but it was still the evolution of the game.
But that
from
was a beautiful
the transition.
moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nothing about my journey I feel has been negative because you learn from the pitfalls and you grow from those. But I've been very fortunate. I've been very blessed. Like I say, I got a praying mother. And she done covered me, I'm sure, a lot of the things. And I pray myself.
100,000 times.
Fast forward, recently, Mother's Day just passed this year. And that weekend, they had a huge gospel concert at the House of Hope. It was about 7, 8 artists. And my mother, I had got her tickets, but I thought I would be working. So she
Right.
had a friend going with her. The friend pulled out, and I didn't have a show.
Wow.
But I wasn't thinking I wanted to go sit through this gospel concert, because it's a lot. But I said, let me take my mama.
Right.
When do we get to hang out like that?
Exactly.
Man, we get in there and there's a young lady, I wish I knew her name to tell the story properly, but she was a prophetess is what she went by, but she was also a dynamic singer. She was the youngest one on the bill that night. But she had this little moment where she was doing testimonial and testifying and telling people to turn to the neighbor. And that turn to the neighbor can be kind of irritating sometimes.
I get it.
Yeah, because by the third time, all right, lady, we turned and we heard him. So, but this time my mama is my neighbor.
Right.
So I got to participate.
Hey, with joy.
Indeed. And not only that, what she is saying, my mother is already been saying to me, and the young lady is saying, your breakthrough is coming. You've been faithful. Keep at it. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is that you're seeking is about to happen.
Hey.
God gonna move in a mighty way. And my mother's saying this back to me, but coming from my mother, it has more meaning. But I know, like, Mom, they say that every Sunday. But lo and behold, Monday morning, I wake up, George Wilborn, my cousin, texts me and said, hey, man, have you seen this bullshit? I'm like, what? He said, you're catching strays on the Breakfast Club. I'm like, now what could this be about?
Okay.
But Breakfast Club, one of the largest platforms, out.
Hello.
So I'm glad my name mentioned regardless. So I check into it, look at the link, and the young lady that's one of the hosts on there, just hilarious, had an incident with a club in Detroit called the One Mic Comedy Club, which is affiliated with Mike Epps.
Correct.
He was an early partner, but he kind of moved on from it. And so she had a bad experience, and she was telling about her experience. She like, first of all, I went to do the booking because they said Mike Epps owned it, and he wanted the comedy OGs. Of course, she wanted to work with the OG. But then as a bullet point, she said, secondly, they told me that Damon Williams had been there previously. And he the OG, but I get there and it wasn't Damon Williams, it was Damon Williams. And I don't know no damn Damon Williams.
Wow.
And she said it like that, just
Right.
like that, right? Then she turned to the camera basically like, you might be a fine comedian, sir, but I don't know you. Now that went crazy.
Hello.
Because a lot of people do know me.
Believe that.
And they went in so heavy and so hard that it made me a viral situation. Now this is the Monday after the gospel concert, and that Mother's Day, I would happen to be off Saturday so I could take my mother to church Sunday morning. More reinforcement from her prayers. Monday morning, the breakthrough happened. And I attributed 100% to that.
A blessing in disguise.
And it went crazy, and it made me viral, so my phone been off the hook. A lot of celebrity comedians chimed in, said the entertainer, Sherry Shepherd, the list goes on and on. So many people, Ricky Smiley mentioned it, and that gave me relevance because, I've been doing this thing 32 years. And I had just thought about doing a joke about the fact that the only way comedians get on TMZ and go viral is if somebody rush them on stage or throw a can at them or, you know, heckling in some type of racial situation. So I was writing a joke where I was going to appeal to a white patron in my audience to call me the N-word.
Right.
You know, so we can get this viral moment. I was going to tell them, look, it's going to ruin your life. You're going to lose your job, but they probably going to start a GoFundMe for you. You'll come up. The last one that did it got $1 million. So it was going to be as a joke.
Right.
I didn't have to do it. I went viral on this Breakfast Club situation. And to be honest, you know, the young lady, I don't think she had any malice behind it.
No, I'm sure she did.
You know, but she was trying to use me as a punchline because it was premeditated and it backfired. But, you know, we had just met really officially New Year's Eve of 2024. So for her to be a youngin', she only 34. I've been doing it 32, you know, so she might not have known or remembered me. And God bless her in either circumstance.
It wasn't a backfire. It was a forward fire.
Indeed.
You know.
How about that?
Yeah, it was
all OG
good.
talk, not
You
a backfire,
did.
forward fire, not show business, business show.
Hello.
Yeah, so
You
we
did.
dropping gems.
I want to give a shout out to Adele Givens. That's my homegirl.
Indeed.
We come up together, you
Love
know,
her
on
to
the
death.
same concrete.
And to life.
You know, and Mike Epps, that's my main man.
Indeed.
There are some others that you mentioned, and I'll get back to them, but I want to pay these people their respect.
Yeah, we definitely can't glaze over the fact that Adele Givens was the host of that show that she was the first person officially to give me the mic.
Hello.
And we discussed that, and she mentioned it recently in this whole Just Hilarious thing because it went crazy.
Yeah.
But Mike Epps, very gracious dude, one of the realest. In fact, Mike Epps last year called my phone or sent me a message on Instagram and said, the Big 3 tournament is coming to town and Cube is looking for a comedian to walk around and hold the mic at the United Center during the tournament. Would you mind if I give him your number?
Why are you asking me that?
Exactly. But that's just the respect factor.
Right.
You know, but I'm like, of course Ice Cube can have my number.
Hey, man, make that
And
happen.
Cube being the realest, man, he didn't have one of his associates or his representative call me. That man called my phone right after that.
Wow.
And said, hey, are you available, blah, blah, blah. It pays this per hour, and you can stay as many hours as you like. And I said, well, how many hours there are? That's how many hours I'll be there.
I won't. Let me get all
and
that.
we chopped it up. He's very gracious, very cool, very humble dude. Now, I'm not aware if he was aware of me prior to that, but Mike put his stamp on it, and the phone rang.
Mike is a very, very gracious person.
Yes, sir.
He and Katt Williams kind of work in that same spirit.
Got a great
You know
Katt
what I'm
Williams
saying?
story after I finished with Mike, because Mike is from Indianapolis, where my mother's
Correct.
from. So Mike Epps grew up with my first cousins, the ones that
Okey-doke.
worked for me in Subway. Talk about
Right.
full circle in the conversation. And so, you know, they from Hallville and, you know, in the mud of Indianapolis. And, you know, he went back and laced that
yes,
whole
sir.
block.
Yes,
and he's
sir.
trying to do some things in Gary. And his wife is from West Side Chicago, and she's doing some Habitat to Humanity projects here. And Mike had me come in and work with him when they announced that
Oh, wow.
here in Chicago. So shouts out to Mike Epps, real good friends with our homie Kenny Howe from here in Chicago. Mike cut his comedy teeth in Chicago. He learned how to do comedy really in Chicago.
Wow.
We raised Mike here in Chicago. He'll tell you that. And Cube, you know, he's a kingmaker when it comes to this comedy thing. Everybody who's somebody, including Katt Williams, Katt Williams and I go back when I used to do New Year's Eve at Star Plaza Theater annually. And I say D-Ray and I, we clash on this because he says he might have been the first, but I believe I was the first one to bring Katt Williams to the Chicago market.
I get it.
And when I brought him, he flew in by himself. It might even been on Southwest. And me and my son, who was a youngin' at the time, picked him up at Midway or O'Hare, whichever airline it was. And I had a 75 Coupe de Ville. And I pulled out the old school because it's Money Mike. It's before he even became Katt Williams.
It's Money Mike.
It's Money Mike. So he jumped in the car, right? And as soon as he sat down, he looked back there and saw my son, spoke to him. Then he said, there's something about the feel of a Cadillac seat on a pimp's back that makes me feel at home.
You did.
And we bonded. There's photos of that, you know, back on the day on my Facebook and Instagram. No cap on none of these things I'm talking about.
Oh, man,
but then fast forward, right? So Mark Curry and I are friends, hanging with Mr. Cooper. He's on tour with Katt.
With Katt.
And I had hit him for some tickets, but he didn't get back to me right away. And then this young lady happened to hit me, and she had a benefit for the fact that she had lost her infant son to cancer.
Okay.
So she had this foundation she started, and this was the kickoff to it.
Blessing.
And I told her I would do it, right? So I had to miss the Katt Williams show. So I called Mark to give him some hell about not getting back with me for the tickets.
Right.
But when I'm calling his phone, Katt Williams answers the phone.
Wow.
So he's like, "Who is this?" I'm like, "It's Damon, man." Mark, where Mark? He said, "Hey, this is Katt." I'm like, "What's up?" He said, "Damon Williams, why weren't you at my show this evening?" I said, "Well, I was calling Mark Curry, and he was supposed to get back with me for the tickets." And he said, "Are you telling me that Damon Williams, the king of Chicago comedy, couldn't get into a comedy show in Chicago?"
In Chicago.
I said, "Well, to be honest, brother, I was coming, but I ended up picking up a gig as a benefit for this young lady who lost her son to cancer." He quit joking around and said, "I'm at the Waldorf Astoria. Come down here. I want to give her $5,000 for her charity." And he had me come down there, and Red Grant had a receipt and peeled off $5,000 cash, and I took it and presented it to the young lady, and I videoed it so they knew everything was on legit, and posted that because that's who Katt Williams is. Katt has so many benevolent stories that you won't even hear about, and some that you will, where he'll hear about somebody's circumstance and he's right there, or he won't even announce that he's there. There have been comedians who go up in LA, and like I said, like the owner of All Jokes Aside, they don't pay you to do comedy in LA.
Right.
He'll see you funny from the back of the room, some young lady will come up,
And
tap
he'll
you on your
throw you
shoulder
something.
and throw you a stack or something because you made him laugh. So shouts out to Katt Williams
Hey, man.
and everything he's done for everybody.
Katt does a lot of blessings.
Yeah.
Hey, brother, throw that blessing to me. Come here. Let's talk. Let's keep
Indeed.
it real.
Because what it will do, the numbers after the Shay when he started the year off.
That's real. That's real situation.
Yeah.
Katt is on automatic about blowing something up.
Yeah.
I want you to come on this show because you're an OG and your spirit is so powerful, brother. I want to sit here and I want to keep it real with you. And if the numbers happen, they happen. So that's where I'm at with it.
Man, let's get Katt, let's get Mike, let's get Sid, DL, Earthquake, Ricky Smiley, George Wilborn.
Hey, man, sit on this couch and let's give it to the people.
Indeed.
My man.
Yeah, so, it's just some great guys. So to rewind to where we started, to be in such a treacherous circumstance prior and early on my life. I mean, I've had a matter of fact, I got a bullet in my leg right now, and that's a goofy story because I shot myself.
Hey, part of the game.
It was early in the game, man, and I had made a little transaction. I was a youngin', and I had a .32 revolver, of all things. So if you shoot yourself with a revolver, you're a goofball. But the circumstance was I went and made my little move, and I had it in my pocket, right? And I had on, now fashion back in the day, I had a jacket that was a sweater, sleeves was suede. Right?
I get it.
So I had on the sweater suede,
right.
Kicking it with my suede 40s, right? 40 back in the day.
Hey, still the shit.
Indeed, Italian cut. And I come upstairs and I threw the little money on the dresser and I went to grab the pistol out of my pocket. But the thing was I had it cocked because one of my OGs was like, whenever you in the move, make sure you cock because you had the ups on the dude so they can't blah, 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 blah. I'm 17, 18. Man, I go to pull that thing out of my jacket.
Pow!
Yeah, and it snagged on the sweater. Pow! And it hit me right here, top of my thigh. Luckily, I curved left. Too much info, but it saved my situation. Otherwise, you might have heard 2 shots that day. Pow!
Right.
Ain't this a bitch? Pow! Because I ain't trying to live from 18 with no thigh. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they'd been out here, and the word would have got out, and they'd have called me Dickless Damon Double D.
And that would have been your stage.
Man, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't even been on stage. Where would my courage come from?
I get it.
It'd have been a wrap, but that was one of the pitfalls. But to come from that lifestyle and having a gun on me at all times in my vehicles, unregistered, blah, 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 taking them chances and penitentiary chances to doing something that is providing joy and happiness on a regular basis. That's why I'm so jovial. And that's why, of course, you still got to be on your square. But back in the day, having to be, that guy
I get it.
versus this guy is so much more
Been there, done that.
beneficial
Totally
and it's
it.
relief. And I would like to pose a question to you, like, because you've always been a presence, and when you walk into a room, it always was noticed. But now it's a different level because it's a fame element, and luckily you built for it because, like I said, we always had some shine. But what's it like now, the recognition, like up and down the street, and things of that nature, being the famous OG now.
A stronger presence of God. I keep that in front of me at all times. You know, this is something that we worked hard for. I prayed for. It was given to me, and my partner as well. And I keep God out front, brother. You know, I'm not trying. If somebody stops me, oh, brother, I walked out of my door this morning, and a brother said, he was driving by, he said, OG, stopped his car and bagged up. Man, I watch your show, et cetera, man. You think I could take a picture? Yes, brother, if you would allow me to take one with you.
How about it?
You see, because I'm more thankful for the picture than they are. And I keep it right there.
And I knew that would be the answer that you would probably say, because when you come from circumstances that are detrimental and then you can become beneficial, it's the most humbling thing.
Man.
So I had one circumstance where I was running through an airport or something, and somebody wanted to take a picture, and I said, man, just let me get my boarding pass, you know, but they left.
Wow.
And I felt bad about that. And
Hello?
It takes this long to do that.
Hey, man.
So now I never want to say to a person that honors my work that I don't have time for this picture or
Brother,
whatever the circumstance
because you and I can look at the camera and say, without you, there is no us.
Point blank. And anybody in this industry or, I'm sorry. Okay. That's good atmosphere, man. It's Chicago. So of course there's sirens in Chicago. Keep that, don't cut.
You dig. You dig.
Yeah, put that in the blooper, man. That man stopped us because there's a siren in Chicago. You know how many
that's
sirens?
A regular.
Yeah, need that. That's how we sleep at night.
You dig.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, so my point is I'm very grateful to be able to be in a business that provides. So when I do what I do now, it ain't even about the business of it. It's the craft.
See what I'm saying?
And what it does, because I've had a story, man, this is a good one too, on the Tom Joyner cruise. I was on Tom Joyner show for 8 years.
Right.
And what came with that also was the ability to do his cruise. And his cruise is a once in a lifetime thing for some people. Some people would never make it to that cruise.
I totally get it.
Well, on Tuesdays, I had this feature called Seriously Ignorant News, and I would come in, I had these quick little jokes. It was a 5-minute segment, which I had to do for 2 years for free.
Wow.
I'm doing it for free. I'm getting up, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, going down on 63rd and hosted on the campus for this 5-minute segment. So I say that, first of all, to say some things don't always pay in the beginning, but it pay off. So I'm doing it, and me and J. Anthony Brown, who is one of the greatest comedians on radio or stage, but the most wittiest, quickest dudes ever in the history. Him and Tom and Sybil made the mode for the morning show. And Jay is the quickest, and I give him a lot of props for everything he does. But he's funny, so we roasting each other. And it turns out we go on the cruise, and some years later, I don't know how long ago it happened, but a guy was on the cruise, and he kept, he took a picture with me, and I took a picture with him. We did that, and then he sat behind me at the concerts, because there's all type of concerts. And he's like, man, let me buy you a drink or something, man. I'm like, no, dude, they don't charge me. I'm good. I don't want you to spend your money.
Right.
But I appreciate the gesture. I'm good. No, I just want you to do a shot with me. So, of course, okay, let's do this shot, bro. We do the drink, and he starts telling me the reason why he was so enthusiastic about trying to bond with me is because he was a military veteran, and he had served in combat, and he had PTSD. And he said one morning he was on the verge of going through a thing, but me and Jay were roasting each other, and he laughed so hard. He said literally we came between him and a bullet. He was about to kill himself. He had a new lease on life, and he booked the cruise so he could come find us and personally tell us to our face how we affected his life. And that's why I like to say you never know who you reach on these podcasts or wherever. So if you got some wisdom or something that you want to impart on people, if you're in business, if you're in entertainment, be gracious and be kind to people, because you never know how you're affecting lives.
Be humble. I'm working really, really hard to give them something of value. I'm not here to make a monkey out of us.
Exactly, because the OG status is well earned now.
Hey, brother, here and the way we define it and the way we demand it, it's not a joke.
Indeed.
You
even though I'm a comedian.
A comedian that has provided so much for our people, and in that lane, like you said, the brother laughed so hard that he did not execute himself. There's power in comedy, and there's power in longevity, and you've been around a long time, so you've helped a lot of people. You've learned a lot that you want to give to people. Man, I've been around you a long time, brother. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to tell you, you've never changed.
Hey, man, what's the point in changing? And what happens when you get in a situation where you're elevated? The only thing that happens is the character that you had in the beginning is just more widely spread. So if you was an asshole, you're gonna be a bigger asshole.
Big one.
If you're a good person, you're gonna be a better dude, and that goes for every aspect of life. So like I say, I look at it as this saved my life. It literally saved my life. To be a stand-up comedian and a business person, and to make my mother proud, and to be able to go to her church and perform for her pastor's anniversary and things of that nature. So what we're doing here is we're trying to give you guys the game, the youngins especially, that you don't have to go through the dirty part. You can start at entrepreneurship. You can start at a positive spot and go forward. So you ain't got to play the games. I told my son I committed all the crimes for this bloodline.
Hey, man.
Because one day we were at his in the gym, and he opened his gym bag and some dice fell out. And I'm like, what's this about?
What are you doing, man?
I'm like, man, we ain't no slick stuff. I committed all the dirt and all the crime. Man, I'm Joe Kennedy to this family.
You did?
You know what I mean?
Knock it off.
Yeah, cut it out.
Hey, I get it.
And so, and the way I handle him, and the way I say people should handle your offspring, is let them know that you are the safe space.
Hello.
No matter what they do, you're not gonna judge. You're gonna get them out the jam first, and then you chastise them. So that when something comes up, my son had a circumstance at his school where a young lady underage had too much liquor and got drunk and sloppy drunk, and they were seniors. This young lady was probably a freshman or a sophomore, and it was at my ex at the house where it took place. And then they went up to the school, and she had a situation, and they thought she had been drugged or whatever. And my son called me immediately and stepped up to the place and said, here's what happened, blah, blah, blah. And I was able to go up there and diffuse the situation before it became a bigger issue. You got to have a relationship.
Exactly.
So that they feel it's safe to be able to call you when they need to.
Exactly.
Especially in the most dire situation. They think we don't know half the stuff that they haven't even done yet, that we've done it and done it worse. Please. Like our upbringing 40, 50 years ago is a lot different from a youngin' who's coming up now, not only in a negative sense, but in a positive sense.
Exactly.
It's benefits that we have and provide to our youth that was not there for us. So we ended up going another route.
We're here.
And we made it here by overcoming those obstacles.
I'm going to go back to, what was the comedy club?
All jokes
aside.
Yes, sir.
What was your relationship like with the great Bernie Mac?
Let's start with Bernie, man.
Yeah.
In fact, here's a great story, and it's unfortunate that Ananda Lewis just passed, and she was a MTV and BET host of Teen Summit.
Wow. And
so Teen Summit was a pivotal, is that the word? Y'all know what I'm saying. It launched some things.
You got
for me,
that.
because it was one of the first nationwide TV exposures I had after ComicView, where I wasn't just doing stand-up. So Teen Summit was a platform where, just like we sitting here, they would bring notables in and we would give experience to the teens and such. And so I had done an event here in Chicago, and one of the executive producers of the show from Chicago was at this event, and she saw me, and it was her first time seeing me, and she was super impressed. So she invited me to join the panel on Teen Summit. Also on that panel was Ricky Harris, may he rest in peace, which is Snoop's cousin. He played Tadao on his records and things of that nature. Ellen Cleghorn, who was the first black woman on Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
She's a professor now at NYU.
Wow.
And Bernie Mac.
Wow.
So I'm the youngin', I'm the new guy, but I'm on this esteemed panel with these cats. So by me being a Chicagoan, by them bringing Bernie out, they brought me out too on the same flight, same limo.
I get it.
To the studio. So now I finally got Bernie's ear, one-on-one, because he been watching me. Bernie's the type, he observed, and he'll tap you on the shoulder. He had a a dynamic little spot on Tuesday nights down at Miltroneer's Jazz Club every Tuesday where he would rehearse with his band, but it was a live show. And if Bernie tapped you to do that show, then you felt like you had been validated, you know.
Get it.
So he tapped me to do that show. Then he saw me coming with him. So now we on the same flight and we talking. It's funny too, because we on US Airways back then and they had just had 2 crashes. And he said they done put us up here on US Scare. So we both praying and got our fingers crossed to make it. Then when we land, we in the limo going to the studio. He said, man, I've been watching you, Holmes. You're coming up in the ranks and doing your thing. He said, but I'm gonna give you 2 pieces of advice.
Wow.
He said the first piece of advice is when it comes to material, that first hour, you're gonna get that. It's gonna come quick. That second hour gonna be hard than a motherfucker, right? He said, secondly, pay your taxes, pimp.
Hello.
He said, I'm out here on this Def Comedy Jam and these guys is busting these checks and spending that money and they ain't got no structure, no organization.
They're gonna be to holler at you.
They're gonna be in the price, it's gonna be a problem. So I listened to both pieces of advice. So I did get the hour, did get the second hour. Initially didn't listen to the tax advice, came to bite me in my ass, but luckily my first wife had put me in investing. And like I told you, they had an investment club, so my stock had got me out the hole. To this day, I still purchase stock on a monthly or weekly basis and let it accumulate. I'm not chasing the market, I'm not up and down, I'm not day trading, but traditionally over time, stocks will profit you. If you pick some stable, like anything that you use that you're a fan of,
Exactly.
invest in that. So I got Walmart, McDonald's,
Exactly.
the staples. Then there's one called Church and Dwight. I'm gonna give y'all this one. Church and Dwight is their company, their parent company. CHD is the ticker sign. Church and Dwight make 2 major items that has no competition. That is Arm & Hammer baking soda. When you say baking soda, you say Arm & Hammer, and Trojan condoms. Trojan is symbolic, it's synonymous to condoms. Never have that stock let me down. It's always escalated. Bernie Mac tapped me after that. Now I got his respect. So now we go on, and when he leave Miltroneers, if he's working, he had me filling in as his host. And that to me said that I have arrived in this game because Bernie Mac believes in my funny.
That's the pat on the back.
Indeed. So there are people like Bernie, but then George Wallace was one of the guys who I watched coming up. And George, to this day, we're friends. And when he had his Vegas residency, he allowed me to come and be open. Not only did he allow me open, most openers are not advertised. The man put me on the billboards. I was on every billboard he was on throughout the airport and across the city in Vegas. And that came from my Tom Joyner affiliation. Like I say, J. Anthony Brown, one of my OGs. And then there's people like Sherry Shepherd. Sherry has the talk show, but before she got the permanent position, she was she was interim host for Wendy Williams. And she was about to go on a stand-up tour, and she respected my comedy. She's a Chicago lady as well. And so she brought me out on tour with her to punch up her set and help her write her stand-up, and brought me on the show a couple of times, as many times as it was possible within union guidelines without paying me. So, looked out. So all these relationships were built from the All Jokes Aside days. It's people like Simbad. Like I said, his brother had the show, gave me my first joint. And Simbad was a big fan of Georgia, so whenever Simbad was doing his specials, he would fly George out. You'll see him in the front row. I went to the Simbad Soul Fest. They gave me tickets for the Jamaica joint that used to be on HBO, and ended up going there and getting married for the first time. Because we started out as a weekend trip, extended it, eloped, did my thing with that. So, it's people like that over the years that have been so just good. Cedric the Entertainer, like I said, when the thing happened with the viral situation, the first person to post a video saying, hey, this brother's legit, is Sid, did the Kings of Comedy tour. And that came from All Jokes Aside because D.L. Hughley and his road manager, Alvin Morris, we had established a relationship, and the promoter, Walter Latham, was looking for opening acts in every city. So they gave me Detroit as an audition, and he said, if you do well in Detroit, we might let you do Chicago, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out you're not gonna be able to find in every market a comedian that has the chops to be on stage with these guys in an arena and hold it down. I started out, I was splitting the tour with a brother from New York. His name was Mike Britt. He went by Mike B at the time. And he did something where he had a little situation with the promoter. And I think it was about attire, because, you had to dress. These cats wearing suits. Lamar Gales, West Side, was actually our tailor. He was my tailor, and he also cut Sid's suit that's in the Kings of Comedy movie. So he had put them suits on me. And so we get to New York, and we doing Madison Square Garden, and not the theater, the garden.
Right.
And this was unheard of, 4 black comedians plus myself doing the garden. And so we backstage, and Jamie Foster Brown from Sister Sister magazine was like, okay, we know who the 4 kings are. How did he get on the tour?
Hello.
So DL being the statesman said, well, he's a funny cat, he's sharp, Chicago. Steve Harvey said, the man had a tailor. He said, anybody with a tailor might have got that job because the man is sharp and he wear them suits.
There it is.
But I earned his respect as well because after the Kings, he left the Showtime at the Apollo, and I was up for the host. I was one of the interim hosts. They narrowed it down to 3 comedians, myself, Rudy Rush, and Teddy Carpenter, one of my OGs as well. And Steve said, I'm endorsing that, man, because you knocking it out the park on this Kings of Comedy tour. And the cool thing about being on that tour was my job was to warm the crowd at the beginning so that Steve Harvey didn't come out, because he went from headliner to host. He didn't come out to a cold house. But then after intermission, he had to come back out. And my job, once again, was to make sure the room was conducive for him to come back out.
So you're really a part of the show.
I'm one of the kings, but I'm a prince.
I get it.
But Steve would tell me, because they had a countdown clock on stage, and I had 7 to 10 minutes. But Steve said, don't worry about that clock. He said, until you see me standing there, that means I ain't ready for you to come down yet. So depending on the market, the bigger the place, the more he wanted people to be settled in. So we get to New York, it's 15 minutes, the clock's still going. I'm doing my thing. Get
But
to
you're
LA,
killing them.
Oh, I'm hitting them. But it's giving me a chance to shine. So I thank Steve Harvey for that opportunity because he had to say so. They all had to sign off on it, but he was one of the guys who had to say so to let me get that thing. What they didn't do, though, is put me in the movie. And that's a different story. I should have been in the film to reprise my role, but it turns out the promoter wanted to sign me to a deal that I didn't agree with. I didn't say no, I just didn't sign it. And when it came time to do the film, he was like, well, I was kind of disappointed that you didn't sign with me, blah, blah, blah. And that was kind of thing. So we have since discussed that. And he said he really didn't realize, because I told him that man could have changed my life earlier in my career if I was in that film. But the people know because we performed for over 300,000 people on that tour.
I get it, brother.
Yes, sir.
D.L. Hughley,
Said Bernie, Steve.
Steve. Hey, man, you guys are all welcome to sit on this couch. If I'm not mistaken, if it's not an imposter, DL is in the comments hitting, hey, brother, we see you if it's you, and we respect you. Come on, sit down with me.
Yeah, and shouts out to DL because fast forward, I went from being the opener to they were doing a Straight Jokes No Chaser tour with DL, Earthquake, Sid. It could be Bruce, Lunell. Mike was on a couple of dates. And I got tapped to do that. Now I'm official. I'm not an opener.
Right.
I'm on the lineup, and we doing these arenas, the same United Center and the State Farm in Atlanta that we did with the Kings back in the day. Come full circle. Now I'm one of the guys.
Right.
And it was a beautiful thing to do, especially to come back home to Chicago and do the United Center on New Year's Eve.
Totally.
And the mayor come backstage and holler at me and things of that nature. So it's been a journey, but these guys have all been beneficial. But I was gonna shout DL out because on one of those dates, he said, are you still doing radio or anything with radio? He has a nationally syndicated radio show.
Right.
I said, no, but I would like to. He said, well, what would you like to do? I said, well, I'm doing a thing with my man Sam Silk. He's Chicago based. He's from Chicago, but his show is in Cleveland, but it's heard worldwide on the web and iHeart. I do a thing called That's What I Think.
Right.
And he said, well, do you want to do that? And just like that, it was done. So for the last almost 2 years now, every Wednesday, I'm on the D.L. Hughley show doing the same type of thing I did with Tom Joyner called That's What I Think.
I want to ask what it's like to be in front of 100,000 people giving you that energy and you giving it back to them.
It's nothing like, an arena, but I'll tell you, the most honest feedback is when you got about 30 people. Because if you got 10, 15,000 people in an arena, it could be 5,000 people in there that don't think you funny, and you would never know because 10,000 people laughing.
I totally
But
get
if you
it.
got 30 people in the room and 10 of them ain't laughing, you looking right at them. And that's the beauty of Chicago, and that's why Chicago produces so many great comedians, because we get honest feedback. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I've performed in this room we're in right now.
I get it.
Because Red Storm did a poetry set in here, and he had the comedians come out, and we were in this very room. And these are the places and spaces that make you.
Exactly.
By the time you get to that arena, you've done it so many times, and you're so adjusted to it. But it's still, the love is amazing to feel your thoughts create. And I know when I say this, it's about to be an explosion of laughter, And then not only do they laugh, then they take it with them.
Hello.
And they tell your jokes at work, and they tell their jokes. So the jokes have exponential outreach and potential. And like I said, save the brother's life. So when I'm in that moment, I don't care what I'm going through. I've had a time, I was at the House of Blues, and I was the first comedian ever to perform Chicago House of Blues, by the way, because I produced the show and I presented it to them. And they combined myself, George Wilborn, Tony Schofield, Dion Cole. We all celebrate our birthdays as Capricorns, even though Schofield is whatever come next, Aquarius. But we let them hang with us. And they would combine us with the Ohio Players or SOS Band or Cameo. We did it 3 years in a row.
Wow.
But one of those times I was there and I had an abscess and my gums are throbbing, and I'm hosting the show, so I'm in between. Every time I went back and grabbed that mic, the pain would go away.
Wow.
And then when I go back there and sit, I'm in misery.
Here it comes.
And that's what the adrenaline comes from, knowing that, this thing we do, how it affects us as well.
That's what I'm talking about.
And that's what I'm trying to tell you. It's a healing, it's a mutual energy exchange for comedians.
Exactly.
If you're doing it for the right reason. Now, some cats get in this because they want to be a movie star, they want to be famous, or they want to just get to another level. Now, I'm not none of that.
Hey,
but I prayed to the Lord to allow me to be a stand-up comedian, and that's what he gave me. Hey. So now my prayers have to get bigger if I want to do bigger and better things.
I get it.
But he granted me my wish of, I want to go across the country and be able to headline in comedy clubs and perform in theaters and work with musical artists. And I have worked with some of the biggest names in this game. I'm talking Luther, Ray Charles, Harry Belafonte, Patty. I can go down the line. The Temptations, even though when I was with the Temptations, it was interesting. The Temptations, the Coasters, the Drifters, groups like that. I'm like, hold on. These can't be the guys because I'm older than two of the members. Now, how did I catch up with the damn Temptations? How am I old as a Temptation? I am not old enough to be a whisper.
They still selling the brain.
But yeah, but it's been quite a journey and a blessing. And one of the best stories I could tell you is one of the Harry Belafonte situation, because it was the Wisconsin State Fair. Mr. Belafonte did not know that there was a comedian on the show. It was me and the Braxton sisters, minus Tony, because they were a separate group. And when he got there, and I'm talking, he pulled up like King Joffrey Jory from Coming to America. Like
I get it.
2 cars, entourage, a couple white ladies with the clipboards and all this stuff, right? And they ushering him in, and he saw me standing there, and I'm in full, Chicago gear. Even though it's a state fair, I'm out there in a 2-piece cut.
That's your get up.
That's what we did. He stops the entourage and comes to me and he says, "Are you the comedian?" I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Belafonte." He said, "I understand that they have you on the show, but that hasn't been authorized by me or my people. And I need to know, first of all, have you been paid?" I said, "Yes, sir, I've already received my pay." He said, "That's first and foremost. Secondly, this may or may not happen. You may or may not perform, because I need to let them know that there's a protocol to this. But before I do that, I want to make sure you got paid." And for that giant of the man that he is to take time personally and address me personally about that circumstance gave me all the more ability to realize that humility is important.
Exactly.
Because he didn't have to stop. He didn't have to do it.
Could have just crushed you.
Could have just cut it. Or not even worry about me getting paid for him to go that extra mile. Simbad's story. Simbad's at the Chicago Theater. Often when Simbad comes to Chicago, he would call me and see if I was available, because, we have the bond. He would allow me to open. He likes my stuff.
Right.
This one particular time, his family, they all from like Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay.
Whole family came to town. Kids, parents, cousins, everybody. It's 20, 30 people backstage. I opened the show. Now, mind you, on the way to the show, my wife-to-be was driving my car. I think my plates might have been expired, and she didn't have her license.
Wow.
She in the south suburbs. She pulled over. They're going to impound the vehicle, and they're going to hold her until somebody make bail because she's driving without a license. I'm on my way to Simbad's show.
Wow.
I cannot go and help my wife to be out of this jam right now.
Wow.
So I sent somebody to go get her out, but I can't go get the car. Anyway, it's a deficit. Get there, do the show. Come off stage, I get back there, his whole family is in tears. Wow. Whole family in tears. he's on stage. He's trying to get the people to come out. I got my whole family back there. They not coming out.
Right.
Turns out he had lost one of his parents
Oh, wow.
during the performance, but he does not know this.
Wow.
Okay. Everybody crying. Nobody's coming out. He like, why y'all fronting on me? Never mind. He goes into his Q&A. He comes off stage. They inform this man that he just lost a parent. I'm standing there. I just lost this money to the bail situation, but I ain't been paid yet. But ain't no goddamn way I could ask this man for my money. I leave. Not 30 minutes pass, my phone ring, and it's Simbad on the phone like, hey man, I heard that nobody paid you. Come back to the hotel and get your money, man. In the midst of his grief, this brother had the presence of mind to call me and tell me to come get my
It's
money.
still business.
I'll never forget that. So when he went through the stroke situation, what he went through, I started a nationwide movement, hashtag Simbad Saturday, where everybody was giving him love.
Right.
And it went all across the country. All of the comedians and Tom Joyner and everybody joined this hashtag, and it's still on my page if you look, where everybody gave him his love. Fast forward, just saw the movie Tyler Perry just produced called Straw. Simbad got a nice little cameo in it.
Wow.
And they got him in a wheelchair as an old, like a homeless type cat. So he's still grayed up, and he looked, but he's back.
Right.
So we praying that he gets fully recovered, and that's just the man that Tyler Perry is. Tyler Perry catches a lot of flack, but as he stated on this past BET Awards, he made more millionaires, black millionaires, than Hollywood ever has.
Wow.
So it's good people in this thing, man.
Let me ask you, that thing with Katt Williams and Shay Shay, how true, in your opinion, how true was it what Katt Williams was saying?
Well, first of all, when it dropped, every comedian was sitting there waiting to see if they were next.
Wow.
Because you ain't no telling where that could have went. And I knew I had a good relationship with Katt. I knew I was solid, but I still wanted that mention because the platform was so large. But some of the things that were said were acknowledged by those that he said it about. And Katt is 100%er. He speaks with truth, but he's also a comedian. So naturally, he's going to exaggerate and bring humor into it.
I get
But
it.
if you look at the Diddy situation, that turned out to be true. And he said a lot of things going to be unveiled. So Katt is a prophet.
I totally get
Katt
it.
is definitely a prophet, man. Katt, he speaks from his mind. He has a very high IQ.
I
What
get
people need to know about Katt Williams, he's like on a Mensa scholar level when it comes to his IQ. And he kind of backs up most of the things he said. He sat there and said, I run a 4.5 40, and then he filmed himself zooming back and forth, running in arenas. So, but it was interesting for me because I knew a lot of the people. For instance, he had said something disparaging about Cedric, and this is when we had just completed the Straight Jokes tour. So I was happy that
it wasn't going on
yeah,
at the
because
same time.
he roasted Sid and Earthquake, and those my people. And Quake a hell of a dude, very high IQ as well. Got a great show on Sirius XM, Quake's House. And so, I ain't want to be in that. But,
I get it.
But we still comedians. And so, sometimes comedians have the thinnest skin because we so used to dishing it. That's why you'll see a comedian, especially an inexperienced one, get upset when somebody heckling. And they'll go from being funny to being hostile and trying to destroy that person. Now I will
Not your job.
Yeah. Now I will distinguish, and I mean like a fire extinguish, I should say,
Right.
a heckler immediately. Because we come from that anyway.
That's the rule
Plus
in
respect
Chicago.
is respect, and we already earn our respect in the streets, so you're not gonna embarrass me on the stage.
I get it.
But I do it with tact because the society now is so dangerous.
And so
we're
timid.
vulnerable.
Yes.
And they what's the word you use?
Timid.
Timid than a motherfucker.
You heard me.
People, nobody gonna get embarrassed, but you started it. So you gotta do it. I feel like this, anytime somebody is, interrupting my show in any form or fashion, my response has to be done with the tact that they can laugh at it too.
I get it.
And with this cancel culture and these sensitive ass dudes out here, you have to walk the tightrope sometimes. Katt Williams kicked the year off with the fact that we not being so political no more. So now this thing's happening. And with Trump ignorant ass in office, all gloves are off because people saying what the hell they feel like saying now. and
Hey.
whites and racists and everything is coming out. So now we've gotten back to a place of honesty with the comedy, and I think Katt speaks from a place of honesty. But we still got to have fun, you know. So if he roasting any of those cats, you know, I don't see it as being 100% factual, but there's a basis for it.
I get it.
And that's my answer.
But it's damn sure funny.
Yeah, it's gonna be
know.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the
So-
good thing. Even right now, like I do a lot of these interviews, and you know, we're not always on performance mode. You know,
I get
so
it.
I like to impart my intellect, but I would like to get a little humor in there too. So we'll laugh about some things before it's said and done. But as real OGs, you know, everything ain't funny.
Believe that. No, even as a comedian,
Indeed,
everything ain't funny, man.
absolutely.
You know, what's the difference you feel in comedy in the past and comedy now?
The timid society that we live in, and the repercussions and the consequences of, you know, being edgy versus what they used to be. Like now, people like Kevin Hart, for instance, he's a brand, he's an entity. He has multiple companies and multiple sponsors. He answers to other people, and he's responsible for a lot of incomes should he get canceled.
So you're in a cage.
He has to, you know, he can be edgy, but there's certain things he cannot voice his opinion. Richard Pryor was beholden to no one.
Man.
Red Fox was beholden to no one. Eddie Murphy's Delirious and Raw would not hold up with today's standards.
I get it.
But the funny is still there.
I get
So
it.
now you have to make a decision. Do you play to your niche? If you have a niche that will support you throughout any storm, then you can be your authentic self.
I get it.
But if you're a corporate entity, you have to weigh that decision.
I totally.
You know, but you still have to now diffuse the cancel culture by stating at the top of your show, like I do, I'm here for comedy. My motto is laugh tonight, be serious tomorrow. So if you came here with your hashtag movement or your feelings or your identities or your, you know, and my son's an activist and a humanitarian, so he like, hey, Pops, you know, you got to switch it up because comedy used to be so homophobic and misogynistic, and you can't make fun of people's humanity as much nowadays. And I agreed with him, but I said you have to understand that those homophobic, misogynistic jokes paid your tuition. So if it wasn't for these jokes, you probably wouldn't even be using them words. So I'm going to do me,
But
right?
when did we forget that they were jokes?
And got it. And that's what people have to realize. You come to, so now, you know, we grew up different. It was he and she. Wasn't no
Right.
pronouns. You know, we had a couple of he, she's, but we ain't talk about it.
It
You
is
know?
what it is.
Yeah. So now, though, I'll say something like, okay, if you're in this situation where you have an identity, but you want to identify different from your given sex or race, I will honor that. So, for instance, if you
I
were
ain't in
born
your
with
business.
titties and you want people to call you Jimmy, I'll call you Jimmy.
I ain't in your business.
They'd be like, hey, man, you seen Jimmy? I'd be like, which Jimmy? Big titty Jimmy. God damn it, if
I
that's
know
who
what
you
you're
are.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, you talking, big dick, big titty Jimmy just left
You
here.
dig?
How's
Hey,
that hurting me?
I get it.
Yeah, so that's
who
what we
you
at
wanna
with
be
it.
known as.
If you want to be big titty Jimmy, be big titty Jimmy.
It is what it is. 2 questions in closing. Who would you look at as the top 5 comedians today? And,
Today,
yeah,
or in
you know,
existence, in history.
Oh, I think it's safer to say in history.
Let's go with history because that's an easier way
Yeah.
to go, which is Richard Pryor. And every comedian or any comedian that doesn't say that has not studied the game or never heard a Richard Pryor album and saw the depth that he went with social consciousness and humor and characters and acting. Richard Pryor gave Whitey to their face. He was the first one to speak like that. Dick Gregory was one, so I give him honorable mention. Red Fox is in my top 5
I get it.
because of the longevity and the impact and the funny.
I get it.
Red Fox has about 50 comedy albums.
Hey,
People don't
man.
even realize he has a catalog that's so expansive. He was Vegas. Then he did the sitcom, and on the sitcom he was authentically himself and put his whole crew on.
Hey,
Third, and not in any particular order, Eddie Murphy. I feel like Eddie Murphy is the most talented of the comedians we've seen with his versatility.
I get it.
Impressions, humor, singing, acting, box office, cultural impact, bringing his whole cast and crew, all blacks on the set, making Paramount pay for what needed to be paid for, and then having box office success. Plus being a young cat, same age as me, so I grew up the same way and speaking the same vernacular. So Eddie Murphy is like my most talented comedian.
I get it.
Then it gets sketchy. I love Bernie Mac. Got to put Bernie in the top 5 just because he's my OG.
I get
He's
it.
Chi-Town.
I
And
totally get
his
it.
impact was about to grow even greater if he had not passed. And people like to say Bernie didn't have a comedy special except for Kings of Comedy, which was a segment of a group. But if you go online on Walter Latham Presents and you look up Bernie Mac, there's about 14 different 25, 30-minute sets, none of them the same. He killed all his cameos in his movies. Any scene Bernie was in, you can quote it. Badussy, Buddha, Dick, and Pussy. He was a man's man, and he told me about that. He said, don't leave out to LA too soon. You need to conquer your own city because you don't want to be a small fish in a big pond. He said, a lot of them cats get out there and they go, but no, he said they go broke or they sucking dick. And I said, hey, that's why to this day I probably have never lived in LA because Bernie scarred me for life with that one. I say, ain't no in between, broke and selling cars, broke and waiting tables.
No.
So he gave it to me raw like that. That was the third piece of advice. Happened. So I've named 4. The 5th one, and I'm gonna give it to him because it never gets mentioned enough, and that's Flip Wilson.
Oh my God.
Flip Wilson not only was a great comedian, he was also a major entrepreneurial businessman. He owned the rights to the Flip Wilson show on NBC. He had an NBC variety show that brought all of the people and all the great black people. That's the only place we saw black people on TV.
Which was next to impossible back then.
We would gather around the TV because black people gonna be on TV because of the Flip Wilson show.
Hey, man.
And he died a rich man.
Hello.
Okay. Now there are other people that I would like to give mention to, like George Wilborn, who walked me in through this game and was my mentor and showed me how to host and showed me how to negotiate my money before I go on stage. Michael Collier, same way, Chicago OG.
Player.
Chicago. And then it's a white guy, George Carlin, most prolific.
What?
George Carlin has about 11 HBO 1-hour specials.
And was raw as hell.
And then you get into all of the Chris Rocks and the Dave Chappelles and, Deion Cole is brilliant. And then all my contemporaries who, if I start mentioning, then everybody gonna feel like they should have been mentioned, and I'm not gonna go that far with it. But it's a lot of cats that's coming up. There's one young comic I like to mention. His name is Henry Coleman, and he has a voice that comes from the past. Like, he's unfiltered and he's raw, and I want to shout that brother out. But it's plenty of you guys. Y'all already know I love everybody, and I feel like that's the whole point of becoming an OG. You shouldn't get to OG status and not be able to look back and say who you've helped along the way. When it came to this business, I was the first person to hand the mic to a bunch of cats that are, household names right now, and they thank me on a regular basis. So I was able to build a currency within the industry, and it came full circle when the situation happened with the Breakfast Club, where I had the tremendous outpouring of, like, it was almost, the comedians said, more than one has said, this is the first time I've seen this type of reaction for an individual that was still alive.
Just because you're 60, 70, 80 years old, it doesn't make you an OG. But
we both know it's a bunch of old fools out here.
Hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's the OFs.
Hey, man, we don't want to throw you out there like that, but you know who you are.
Yeah. Or maybe you don't. That's why you're foolish.
No, that's bullshit. Yeah. See, one thing about being an OG, it's in you, it ain't on you.
How about that?
How do you define the OG?
An OG is a person that has been through some things.
Hey, there it is.
And survived and persevered, but also used those examples to prevent the young G's, because I ain't gonna say the YNs is the new term, but I'm not gonna call them that. The young G's, to make it through this life, this game. And I'm talking male or female. And I didn't mention enough women in this business. And I did do Sherry Shepard, Adele Givens, we mentioned her, Kim Whitley, it's a bunch of women. Then coming up in Chicago, Diane Corder, who put me in the game. She's my comedy OG as far as getting me on the first ComicView episode. So I gotta give her homage. And then the young girls that are coming up, young ladies, young women, Just Niche and Corey Bell here in Chicago making major noise, and Cousin Tierra. And there are more. Cherie Luckett is an OG from this thing. She's been doing it a long time. So I want to acknowledge the fact that I'm an advocate for the women in this game. And an OG definitely takes care of the women in the population, because it is we were raised by women. I know I was. We have to pay that respect to the women out here and give them their love. And that's why I have made a public appeal to make sure we rectify the scenario from the Breakfast Club situation. I actually have presented to the young lady that I think we should go out on tour and combine the young and the old forces and put the young G's and the OGs together and show them how to, do this thing.
And we ain't mad at you.
Nobody.
Behind or besides every gentleman, there's a lady. And that's how we look at it here. We don't downplay women. Just because we use the OG, that does not exclude women.
And let's clarify for those who might be watching, because it's the first time I'm here, the G stands for?
Gentlemen.
Thank you. It's not original gangsters.
No, we're above that, and we leave it right there, brother. Hey, it's been a great journey with you, man, and some people are very fortunate to make it overnight. But most people, it's a 20, 30-year journey, man.
And I'm a overnight success from the internet after 32 years, 33 going on in the game. So I'd like to thank you, and I can mention Brother Delvin Molden for, first of all, creating this platform. He and I go back to my All Jokes Aside days, and for having me on. We were talking about other things. We want to take this thing cross country. We want to do live events. We want to have these type of sit downs with the OGs in every community across the country.
Oh, yes, sir.
And I want to team with you on that, and anything I can do to facilitate it, whether I'm involved or not. And I know a lot of people, and we know some of the same people. So let's keep this OG brand going, and let's create some new OGs by the OG platform.
And we're going to leave it right there. Hey, thank you. Subscribe, share, hey, comment, become and represent the OGs and ladies. That's it.
And if you didn't know, my name is Damon Williams.
Oh, they knew and they know.
Check out the hashtag I know Damon.
What do you got coming up?
Oh man, but I'm perpetually on tour, and all my dates and information is on DamonWilliamsComedy.com. And you can find me on all my socials at Damon Williams.
My man, there it is. You have it. Like I said, we do it right here. That's it. That's all. If you live in a city, any city, big or small, and you would like for Mr. Rick to come to your town, get as many subscribers as you can in your town, go in the comments. Let me know who your OGs are. They could be men or ladies. Doesn't matter. As long as they have a great history, whoever has the most subscribers, I will interview them. We won't pick them. You will pick them. So we'd like to tell those stories. Let me know why Mr. Rick should come to your city and interview the OG ladies and the OG gentlemen. That's it. That's all.